This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Welcome back to the Norris Group Real Estate Radio Show and Podcast. Back again with Bruce Norris, talking about the books that had the biggest impact in his career. Hope you enjoy. So the next book is The Greatest Miracle in the World. And this is something that's very, it's deep in your presentation. It's been something that you really talk about, and one of the probably most impactful times in your life, specifically the God Memorandum. But I'll let you tell that story.
You know, I think it's one of the things that's sort of a sequence. I listened to a Jim Rohn seminar, and then there's a suggestion of going to hear Ogmandino or get his book. So that was why that happened. And it almost happened back to back. And it was interesting because I was so suspicious of seminars, and then loved the first one I went to. So then I thought, wow, I mean, that's a big deal. So, okay, so go hear Ogmandino. I was so impressed with the book that I bought 10 of the books, and it was called The Greatest Miracle in the World. And I just loved the book. And so I thought, well, I'll buy 10, I'll give 9 of them away. And within 3 months, I quit the business I was at doing the real estate and went out on my own. And within just a couple months, I had this conversation with the seller. And I had been in front of enough sellers at this point to realize this was not a normal seller, in the sense of his, a lot of people wanted to get as much as they could and protect their equity and all that. He could care less.
We used to call them laydowns. Like whenever you got a lay down, you're like, what?
Yeah. Well, that was what happened. It was, I can pay you this much for the house. That's fine. A monotone. That's fine. I need this long of an escrow. That's fine. I need you to do a little work. That's fine. I mean, literally. And I was just like, that's not fine. In my head, I'm thinking, this is not good. And I did. I said, I don't want to talk about your house anymore. Are you okay? And he looked surprised at me, and he says, no, I'm not. And I said, okay, I'm not going to talk to you about your house anymore. I said, I'm going to go to my car and get you a book, and I want you to read it. And so came back and gave him the book. I said, if you don't want to read the whole book, this is the chapter I want you to read. And the chapter was the God Memorandum. It basically just reminded you, if you're down, you got to remember, man, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And who knew that the next morning when I went to go see him, he opens the door and says, I want you to know that the book you gave me saved my life. I was going to sell you my house and kill myself. And Joey, that was profound for me, because I never sat across from anybody in business again without looking for that. Are you okay? And it was a game changer, because it made me relaxed about the visit. Because we know what he said to me when he did sell me his house. He said, I'm going to sell you my house. He said, because I realized what I need is I need a fresh start. And I realized, okay, we're in the fresh start business. That's not bad. Yeah. And I got a very positive, matter of fact, I started, and this even happened before then. I didn't have a name to put with it, but the original guy that I worked for, he called me back about 6 months after I left the company. And he says, do you know who this is? I said, yeah, it's Dan. He said, yeah, he had closed his business. Basically, it went out of business. And he said, I'm going to start up again buying houses. And he said, I only want one person to work with. And I said, and that's me. He said, yeah. I said, why is that? He says, you're the only one I can trust. I said, well, the problem is we just do business so differently. And so he said, well, how do you do it? So I tell him, I get a phone call, and I listen to the problems, and I bombard it with solutions, one of which might be me buying it, but I just bombard it with stuff that isn't me involved. And he's like, you can't buy houses that way. I said, well, not only can you buy houses, you actually respect yourself and enjoy the business. And that's what I was missing when I worked for you. So that was quite but see, again, have I mentioned a real estate book? No. this has to do with bringing the best you to the business, and so I was a very successful home buyer and didn't know squat about real estate, really.
Yeah,
I knew how to interact with people and get trusted.
it's one of those moments that gets seared in your mind, for the rest of your life.
Yeah, when somebody says you just saved my life, and it's been, when it's one of the reasons I speak, Joey, so I can share that, hey, however you're viewing this business, it doesn't have to be that way. You can love what you do because you're going to treat that person across the table like they're valuable. And you'll probably buy more houses because of it, because I love when people used to say this to me. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I've never told anybody else. But the reason they were able to tell me that is they trusted me. One of the books that we'll talk about next time is called The Speed of Trust. And if you get trusted, miracles happen. It really does. It's the barriers break down. But when you're buying houses, the original thing is, I can't trust you. You're trying to steal my house. And then when you start suggesting things that don't include you buying a house, I mean, I've had people, this was kind of funny. This one guy, there was a property that was an ad call. It was in Corona too. I'm going to forget the exact numbers, but let's say it was a 140 grand house and the guy owed 80 grand on it and he didn't want any money. He just wanted to walk away from the 80 grand loan. So I went there and I went through the whole thing. Why don't you just list it? You'll end up with this. Why don't you do this? He says, you run an ad that you're buying houses. Are you going to buy my house or not? I said, you're telling me that you're going to find somebody to deed this house to today, not get any money and sell it for 80 grand. Yes. Okay. Might as well be me. But after we got done signing the paperwork, I said, you got to tell me why that is. Why did you just do that? And it was sort of like a big relief. I could tell when he signed the paperwork, as far as making the deal, a load came off. I said, okay, help me understand that. He said, I've never owed money in my life. I have a building in New York that I inherited, pays me 10 grand a month. I've never owed any money in my life. I'd rather rent than have this payment. Okay.
Simple.
But he was looking at me like I'm a nut. I'm keeping on avoiding taking his property with other suggestions that were better. But I enjoyed that, and it didn't prevent me from buying houses. It made me buy many more, I'm sure.
The next book is a really simple, easy read. Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. Why that book?
Who Moved My Cheese was a story about two mice. Basically, they were used to cheese being in the same place every day in any quantity they wanted. And then one day it changed. And the mice.
You mean like foreclosures? They were here all the time?
Yeah, something
and then
like
they weren't?
that. Yeah. So that's exactly how it related to the world of business, for the real estate investor, because that book came out in 1998 and we had foreclosures explode till 96. Well, if you were buying properties, you definitely bought at the auctions and trustee sales and all that. And then all of a sudden you didn't. And it's sort of like, okay, what do we do now? And Who Moved My Cheese was really a story about attitude. So there was one mouse who just said, well, I'm going nowhere until they bring the cheese back. And so he didn't get to eat a lot of cheese for a long time until he finally sucked it up and went somewhere else, and then hooked up with the guy right at the end of the book that was doing very well, because he decided maybe there's another cheese source. And so he had a much better outcome because of his attitude. He says, okay, there's going to be more cheese, but I can't be here waiting for this to come back. I got to go find the new source. And that was, really probably the beginning of the quadrant system, to be honest with you, because we had gone from buying a bunch of REOs to there were no REOs. Okay, well, what did we do in the 80s? Oh yeah, we bought from people. Okay. And so, okay, it's back to that. So now we're back to quadrant 3 and 4. How do we do that? Well, somewhere in the next year or two, I bought the 93 building lots that I would ultimately build in 2004. And that was all part of the process that, Who Moved My Cheese allowed me to think out of the box, that okay, just because what I was doing doesn't work anymore doesn't mean I'm done. It means I have to look what's next.
Okay, the last book on your list is tons of industries have really referenced this book, you know, whether it's insurance, whether it's sales, whether any in real estate. Good to Great by Jim Collins. Can you talk about that book?
Yeah, Good to Great was a really great read, and again, didn't have anything to do with real estate per se, but it had to do with what your business, what your passion is. So there were three parameters or markers for you to answer. What am I passionate about? What can I be the best in the world at? And is it something that's profitable? Can I make a profitable business out of it? So at the time, he wrote this in 98. The Norris Group didn't start until about 05, 04. So, but at that time, I was teaching. I was doing some teaching, and I was being asked to be teaching nationally. Well, I realized when I had a pretty good grasp on California statistics. When I go to New York and speak, I had to dummy all that down and be generic. Or when I went to Texas, and we had a promoter at the time that was very capable of getting large audiences. And so, I mean, this was going to be the future, but I realized I wasn't passionate about it. I wanted to go. As a matter of fact, really, that was part of what I was thinking, is that knowing what I know about California's charts, if I just said I'm just teaching California, create a California only series, then no one will be able to compete with us, because they'll bring their generic stuff in and it won't apply. Ours will be a direct hit. You're in California, you're an investor. This is exactly what these charts mean and exactly what you do, because that's what they say. Well, that was a pretty cool moment. Now, that was really shocking to the promoter at the time, saying, I'm not going to go around the country and teach this anymore. And that was about coinciding with Aaron coming to the company. And so I think the first document he created was the California crash. But right after that, he created those 5 courses, the California only series. And that was a home run, because it was a direct hit to what California investors had to do. So that was the model that I used. The Good to Great book said, you want to go from good to great. The great is got these 3 things. What are you passionate about? What can you be the best in the world at? And does it make a profit? And that's for the last 20 plus years, that's where we landed, because that was my passion.
So now that we're kind of through your list, I'm going to throw in a couple of Joey's honorable mentions.
Okay.
And so, and then I'll give you a minute to comment on them. Now, Aaron always credited him becoming an actual real estate investor to John Schaub and his book, Building Wealth One House at a Time. And so I think that's a very important book. If it meant that much to Aaron, it must have been a great book.
Well, John Schaub has a trophy in his living room called the Roney Award for a really good reason. We don't give those away. So he had a great impact. And what was great about John Schaub, so sometimes people get overwhelmed, like, okay, the Norris Group for many years bought 80 houses a year and flipped them. Well, that's out of the range of most people being able to think about that. What John Schaub suggested is just buy a house a year.
Yeah.
Pay it off. You'll retire in luxury, and you didn't have to quit your job. But it was true, and that's why I love interviewing people like John Schaub, because their journey, it was different, but very, very successful.
And he's the guy who's always been conscious of lifestyle along with.
Gosh, if he owns a category, it's, can we play now?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, because he's asked me, I've get an email, you ready for your plane ride? I mean, I won't mind doing it, but it seems like he has a lot of his time on his hands. Last time I remember him contacting me, he sends me pictures as he's flying over Cape Coral, and he says there's a lot of blue roofs here. So that
And
was
you don't mean like, hey, let's both book a flight. No, he means like he's flying the plane
he's
and
flying
taking
his
it.
plane.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's a flight instructor, like that good at that. He's also
He owns his own
a
plane.
yacht. Yeah, his own plane, his yacht. He's a yacht instructor if he wanted to be. He's that kind of. So yeah, he said, okay, what are the tools to get me the lifestyle I want? I think it's real estate investing, but I don't think there's a lot of people like made a business of flipping stuff and all that. I don't think that he made. I mean, he probably flipped some properties, but I think he really had that model of let's make this simple. Let me get a little pack of these things and pay them off and improve them. He taught Mike Cantu, retire your worst rental and replace it with a better one. So you do that every year. So, you know, he just has a pack of rentals that are probably A plus in every way. And he has a very boring life, so he can take his plane and his boat. So yeah, that's attainable. If you're teaching and they go, yeah, but this guy flips 80 houses and that is never going to happen. You can see how some people wouldn't be able to relate to that. But John Schaub said, here, let me show you how to buy a house a year and do it on the side. And eventually you get where you want to go. So yeah, that's what's fun about the real estate industry. There's so many ways that people have been successful. So when we give somebody an award, first of all, they just have to have a spotless reputation, which he does. And they just have helped a lot of people get what they wanted.
So my second honorable mention book is another friend of the Norris Group, is Big Shifts Ahead by John Burns. It's probably the clearest demographics book ever written. Can you comment on that book?
Yeah, I was pretty excited. You know me and the statistics. So I'm probably the only person, by the way, I'm named in that book. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've read it.
That was fun. Yeah, that was very kind of John. Big Shifts Ahead, I read in one day, which is no joke because it's a very dense book. But I was excited because of how he divided the demographics up. It was much clearer than the baby boom generation and the way they had done it. Yeah, it was really smart how he done it. He took it in 10-year chunks, and then there were different bents to each generation, to where home ownership, which was an urgency for the baby boomers, right? I mean, that's what you wanted. By the time you were 20, man, you were married, and by the time you were 21, you had a house. And then, to have kids and then them have kids, and those kids are like, eh. So what he did is broke down all those different characteristics of people and how it changed. So the demographics went from you're married and you've got 2 kids, and now you're not married and you have no kids. And you're going to have kids later, and there's going to be lots of single households. So it was really one of those defining books where you go, wow, this has got big shifts ahead. That's exactly right. This is really going to change the landscape of how real estate works. So yeah, that was I mean, you buy that book for $29. I remember thinking about that. I wonder how many tens of thousands of dollars of data were bought to put this together, man.
Well, so much that he says there's no follow-up book coming because it was so much work.
No, that's definitely the best real estate research book probably ever written, no doubt.
So before we go, what's your most recent fun read that you've done?
Fun read. That's interesting. I don't usually read for fun. Did you know that?
No.
Well, Green Lights was fun. But
did it start that way?
Matthew McConaughey. No,
okay.
I just did it. I like the guy, but it was a journey, and it was actually very intense, because he's an intense guy, and a lot of the things that how he's successful, it should not have happened. There's no way. He forced his way in the doors. of things because he wouldn't take no for an answer, or he suggested to people that he's the best person. He had like a bit part, and he was saying, are you happy? You know, basically talking to the director. So are you happy to be aboard? No, I really want the lead part. And then 3 months later, he's got the lead part, you know? So I liked the fact that he was so aggressively assured of himself. And he had his upbringing was pretty intense. He had a dad that was really no joke of a man. As a matter of fact, the point for their family, the point of passage was when you could beat your father in a fight. Like what? So yeah, that was the rite of passage. One of the stories, and this was just Matthew McConaughey's, he's like 12 years old. So how are you going to spend your summer? He decides that their house sort of got a lot of acres between it, but there's a lumberyard back there. So he decides to build a tree house with stolen lumber. So he gets tin snips and snips off the edge of the fence to where every night he can steal some lumber, and he starts building a 12-story tree house.
Oh my God.
That is all the way to the top of his house, where when he gets it all done, which is at the end of the summer, he's at the top of the world looking.
Sheesh.
Yeah. I thought he's very introspective, and he's very intense, but I think actually he's got maybe a future in politics, and I think that he wouldn't mind doing that.
Well, you know what he'd say to that? He'd say, all right, all right, all right.
Do you know that line was not a planned line at all? Yeah, that was just
it's his iconic like phrase now.
It's the first thing he ever said on camera.
Oh,
and it was his well, he wasn't supposed to even work. He was in school. So how intense this guy is? I mean, he was at film school, which was not a planned thing. He basically told his dad he was quitting school so he could go to that. And so he's just in that type of school, and somehow he chance meeting at a bar or something, a guy that was he was there to be a director of a movie. And so they started talking, and he said, yeah, it sort of like gave him a chance at something. And McConaughey thought about the role, and there were like, I forget exactly what it was, but it's sort of like he was going to be sort of like his role was going to be flirting with the girl. And there were three check marks that he wanted in his head that he had to have. And like he thought of all three, and that was when he pulled up in the car and he went, the checkbox, all right. He got all the checkbox. So
that's hilarious.
But that I love that, because I mean his life is really an unintended journey too. I mean, he's made his own way. There's just no way he gets a chance without him being, give me the chance. In other words, I'm squeezing my way in here. And I don't know if you know this or not, but so he's getting paid $10,000, $15 million a role for the what do you call it? The romantic comedies.
Mm-hmm. The rom-coms.
Rom-coms. Okay. So that was what he was known for, and he could get hired for them all the time. He decides that's not what he wants to do anymore. So literally he tells his agent, not doing those anymore. I want roles that are equal to the excitement of my life. And 18 months pass, and he finally gets a role, and then he wins the Oscar.
Yeah, the body transformation that he went through.
Yeah, he had to lose like, I don't know, 60 pounds, which he wasn't fat.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. That's just the intensity of this guy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so reading that book is really kind of it's just a really fun journey. So that was a fun book, but man, the guy could get intense. I mean, if he had roles, he'd be running on rocks for 5 miles because the guy had to be tough, you know?
Have you seen the movie Interstellar?
No.
You have to see that movie. That's
okay.
It's one of my top 5 favorite movies because of my daughter. There's there's a relationship that he has with his daughter. He's this guy that's going to space, and I won't spoil the story, but at the end of it, he makes me cry.
Okay. Now
Yeah,
that's McConaughey.
Yeah.
Okay. He's, that there's a part of the movie, and I don't know what the name of the movie is, where he's pounding his.
Yeah, that's it's
that real estate, or it's the Wall Street movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
no, it's the DiCaprio is the main guy. He's yeah.
Okay. Well, he's sitting at a table with DiCaprio, right?
Yes.
That was not a planned sequence. He just invented that. Matter of fact, the whole thing, when he's like Fugazi, that was all made up. He just went off, and they kept it.
That's funny.
Yeah, right. That's McConaughey, man.
So as we wrap up, we talked about maybe giving out a book that maybe people should read, because it's going to be kind of impactful here coming up pretty soon. And the book that we talked about is The Price of Tomorrow: Why Deflation is the Key to an Abundant Future, by Jeff Booth.
Yeah, he's he's the technology genius who's created companies and is a billionaire. But his take on this, is from a guy's background that makes you understand the technology's job is to make things cheaper, more accessible, faster, and ultimately replace human beings. And it made me think that, and it's sort of like, as time goes by, things get more and more efficient. So if you ever watch a video of Tesla, there's this moment of like, where are the people? They don't need a lot of people to build these cars for a great many of the processes. Well, I just read an article a couple of weeks ago that for like the beginning part of putting the Tesla together, they've eliminated 80% of their robots.
Wow.
They've refined the process so much that it now is like a one-piece thing instead of an assembly. So that's what he was saying. He's basically saying that there's going to be progress to the point that you're going to be missing a lot of jobs. So that's the future. And it was over my pay grade, but I read it because, I remember there was an article in the Riverside Press, this probably 3 years ago, but it outlined the percentage of jobs in like each category, and basically said in 10 years, 80% of those jobs would not need people.
Wow.
It's like, what?
Sounds like something you'll be talking about on June 3rd when you deliver your time report this year.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely touch on that. And boy, it's interesting when you think about, okay, I'm going to do it one more time, and then you have a major bank fall apart in 3 days, and all of a sudden you go, wow.
And then dominoes start to fall, and the government has to step in to say, whoa, we gotta do something here.
Yeah, but see that, there's really big ramifications for all of that stuff, including, okay, so what is interest rates going to do? You have inflation, but now you're saying that, and I'll describe this. This is one of the chapters. See, that's what's fun about writing these reports. You have new chapters every time because now there's different circumstances. These banks are holding assets that are perfectly safe that are now devalued because the interest rates have gone up. So they're getting paid like on a 10-year T-bill. They bought them when they were 2%, perfectly safe. But now the yields, we got to 4%. Well, if you have a 2% 10-year T-bill, somebody's not going to buy your 2% 10-year T-bill at face value to get 4%. They got to discount it. Well, that's what happened. The bank assets, when you had the people that take a look at your books and go, are you evaluating this 10-year T-bill at face value or discounted value? And and so that was when it hit the fan. But then you realize, well, that's the circumstance of every major bank in the world. They have securities that are under the normal interest rate now. So how in the heck do you fix that? Well, one of the ways they can fix it is you have to go, okay, well, we better make interest rates 1%. So the asset value is fully still there. See, so they've put themselves in quite a mess. And that's why the title of the report is, we are going to have a lost decade or 1% rates.
Interesting. Well, this was fun, Bruce, and I think we're gonna give it about a month, and then we'll do this again, and we'll talk about 5 real estate related books, if that's all right with you.
Sure. I guess I'll read up.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under California DRE License 012-19911, Florida Mortgage Lender License 1577, and NMLS License 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the Hard Money tab.